You've lived a great life and done well for yourself. But what mark will you leave on the world? How will you inspire future generations? Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand have helped thousands of people answer exactly those questions. If you've ever wondered, what will be my legacy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Stan and Katie Beth.
Welcome back to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your host, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today is best-selling author, licensed clinical social worker, and the founder of Honor Bound Academy, Thomas LaGrave Jr. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to have you with us today.
As am I. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So to dive right in, I was hoping you could take a few minutes. You have a really unique background. Tell our listeners a little bit about your background and what inspired you to found Honor Bound Academy.
Okay, so just to make it a quick and to the point, I am a former Navy SEAL. I went in the military in 1979, which was just like 4 years after Vietnam, to a military that was broken. Morale was horrible, but I had been thrown out of my house by my father because of the use of substance, and I wasn't going to go back to his house, and I had to figure out something to do, so I decided to join the military. Turns out that in the Navy, in the third week of boot camp, if there's a screening program for Navy SEALs, and if you want to take a screening test, you can take your shot at becoming a Navy SEAL. I've always liked challenges, so I went and took the screening test, passed it, and ended up going to, the amphibious side of the Silver Strand in Coronado, and did a 6-month program at Buds from class 106 and graduated in February the 29th, 1980. And it was a magnificent beginning. And then the same reason my father threw me out of his house for drug use, I was discharged from SEAL Team 1 for drug use 9 years, 6 months later, and found myself in a place that was just devastating. Not only had I lost a career, I lost my identity. And now this is the caveat that catches it all. I ended up going into a recovery facility program, seeing that, I had a problem, but was not able to figure out how to live life because in the recovery program, they said it's in our past, our childhood. So without being able to understand my past, I decided to put myself in that environment, took a job as an overnight counselor at an adolescent recovery facility. I did not go there to help kids. I went there so that they could help me. And in a matter of time, it came to understand that I did receive the gift of sobriety and how to live life through them, found out I had a skill and a talent with youth, and then decided that I could not go back to the military to the job I loved, so I would create the new job, and that would be to be there for the youth that were once there for me, and ended up going back to school, getting the credentials, and have now dedicated my life for the last 40 years to the youth of this country.
That is an incredible and really wonderful story. So one thing we really love to highlight on this podcast are not only our guests' successes, but also the failures that they had to overcome. So I really appreciate you being so forthcoming about your struggle with sobriety. And we were joking before the podcast started about you living in wine country and, fighting to maintain the sobriety. But I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. They just don't talk about. And so that being your rock bottom, your turning point, I think is really, really interesting. And of course, inspired you to start sort of a whole new life that now is helping so many young adolescents. Tell us a little bit about Honor Bound Academy. Who is this academy for? What age group of young men? What types of programs do you have there for them?
Well, the program is a 1-year program, and I chose the ages of 18, 19, and 20. If you go to 17, you're dealing with parents, as you should have. They have the right to tell you what they want for their kids, but this is that transition from adolescence to adulthood. And the program is created with a mentoring focus where you're going to center all these young people with individuals that are able to show you, not tell you what it is to be an adult. And so that program came about because I looked at my childhood, and the last 40 years, there's literally been 3 different generations growing up in that time frame, and to see the difference and understand that what once was is no longer, and what was it that I had that isn't there now. And it came down to a strong male role model in the form of a program that transitions you from adolescence to adulthood in a fashion of action, not words.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love the idea of a program. I'm the mom of a 16-year-old who I'm trying to really teach all of these different life skills. And I will say it's such a struggle. There are so many different things in our society that these young men are having to overcome that I don't always feel prepared to address. So Honor Bound Academy is really intriguing to me, and just the background and everything that you've created for that. So thank you for your work to do that for all of these young men. About how many young men do you have there?
You know what? This is the caveat to why I wrote the book. I spent a lot of finances creating the program, and then I spent literally the last 15 years trying to get funded and was not able to get funded. And because of that, I was not willing to leave the program to nothing, leave it, on my chalkboard. So I decided to write a story. I put it in the context of today, and the title is Special Welfare, Social Warfare, Adolescence to Adulthood, a guidebook. And what that does is it gives you the understanding of the program that I had from beginning to end. At the end of the book, I gave the program so that someday, or if somebody sees that they want to fund it now, it's ready to go. All that you need to do is in that place in my website that we talked about, that you'll share with later, is the beginning, the middle, and the end of the program, so that you can see it for yourself and how you can get involved with it.
That is really cool. And there is information. We will link this for everybody. We'll cover it again in a moment here. But the website is thehonorboundacademy.org. You can find a lot of great information about this program. That's also where you would go to donate to this incredible cause. But you brought up something I do want to talk about. You have written a couple of things. You just mentioned one, but you also wrote a book called The Bell Tolls for Thee. So talk to us about what inspired you to write the book and what our readers could really expect from the book.
I got to go back to the military as a contractor from the year 2010 to 2016. And I was what was called a military and family life counselor. And the military finally saw the need of bringing in therapists. And they actually put us in the commands all around the world, all around the country, wherever you found active duty and their families, except for war zones. And I was sent to Africa to work with the Navy and the Army. And there's something about that place in Africa. It was in the Horn of Africa, Djibouti. I got a chance to see Ethiopia and Kenya. They were third world countries that I saw families there that had nothing about what we in America have, and still could laugh, still could smile, and still felt the same way about families. So that book, The Bell Tolls for Thee, is how did I end up being born in America in the end of the 1950s, and how I ended up in the Horn of Africa. And it's just a story of who and what happened to me that brought me from one place to the other. And the best part is those two books connect to each other. They were written as accompanied.
That's fantastic. Stan, I know I've stolen all of the questions and all of Tom's time so far. What questions do you have?
So, Tom, I'm really curious. You've been in this work for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that you have distilled some insights. I'm sure, this is what your books are about, really. But I'm curious to know if we were able to distill an insight that you've gleaned over the time you've been involved in this program, what would be the key thing, or the very small number of key things that you would tell parents of young guys on the front end before they ended up with these behavior patterns? Are there things that you've noticed that parents could be conscious of so that they didn't inadvertently nudge their young man into, and I'm assuming that this is about males, not males and females. Am I right about that?
Yes, but there's an accompaniment, both a program for the girls and the boys. But let's stay with the men right there. What your thoughts?
Yeah. So let's get to that in a second. But yeah. So what's the insight that a parent of a young child would need to take away from this conversation so that they could stop doing what they're doing or do something different so that their child never needed to be in this program?
Yeah. Here's the thing is define for yourself, and this is I'm saying to the parents, define for yourself what it means to fail. How do you see failure? From my perspective, is failure is a right that you have as a human being, because I sit here and am not a product of my successes. This is a product of failure taught me what I did wrong. Failure taught me what I didn't have. Failure taught me that no matter what, I had the resiliency to stand. If you do not let your children fail, there's an issue there. And it's, I love my kids. You embrace them. You would do anything for them. But the fact of the matter is the harm that you do by not allowing them to fail, and then for you to step back and say, get up. You're going to stand with them, but you're not going to pick them up. Depending on how you define failure, that is a key issue.
That's an insight. So what would be the sentence if you could coach a parent into, if you could write the script for what they would say to that child when they see failure? What would that sentence say?
The sentence says, I believe you. I will be there for you. Now let's get up and go forward.
All right.
It's good wisdom.
Yeah.
It's good wisdom. What are some other things that our listeners, many of whom are parents of youth this age, what are some other things that you wish parents know, either about your program specifically or about the unique challenges that adolescents in this age group are struggling with, that parents who were raised in a different generation may not realize are even out there?
Yeah, here's the thing that I offer to all parents. Over the years, the reputation is I work well with especially teenagers, and parents will do, they whip themselves because they feel guilty. They feel that they're horrible parents. They feel that they're letting their kids down. And this is what I say to all those parents. I said, do your kids know that you love them? Do your kids know that you love them? And the parent's going to say, yeah, of course. And I said, well, that's all you need to do. If your kids know that you love them, you pretty much drop them on their head and you're still going to figure it out. Love
that makes this mom of 4 feel so much better. I don't know what all I've failed to teach my children, but they do know that I love them.
And in this world, as a clinical therapist for 4 decades now, it is my role to find what is ailing you, what is darkened deep inside you, to find that and teach you, help you to stand up for yourself and alter that so that you turn inward and see that you have internal resiliency. That is a clinician. I've never saved anybody and never fixed anybody. I went and found where your issues were, showed you what was in you already, and then activated it and then told you, you can believe what you want. You can believe that you're terrible, but look at what we've just talked about. You see how wonderful you actually are. Now your responsibility is to believe it.
I love that.
Isn't that the issue? Isn't that the issue that they don't know how awesome they are, how unique they are, and they also don't know that their parents love them without condition. Yeah. Isn't that the thing?
Yeah. Unconditional love is, because that's the one that you give it. And here's the thing is, if you never got it, you don't know how to give it. And if you never got it and you're coming to me, that's one of the most difficult clients that I'll ever face. It's doable, but it's incredibly difficult because of what love is. Love is this powerful thing.
One of the things I talk about a lot is how important it is to not just love your kids and to love your kids unconditionally, but to say it to them all the time so that they hear it probably at some point, maybe even more than they want to hear it. Yeah, I guess I'm convinced that you really can't say it too much. And yeah, that was an insight. And maybe I don't think I discovered that. I think I read that somewhere in a book, but saying it aloud, saying it in writing, saying it in handwritten notes on special occasions, saying it just for no occasion, saying it in text messages, I think I guess I would say if I could pick any one thing a parent would do, it would be to say that I love you just like you are as often as I can say it to them in many ways. And
here's the thing with that now. Let's tie it to failure. If you're saying it just like you're saying it, when they fail, you say, hey, I love you. Now figure this out. And depending on the age, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you know what? They scrape their knees. You know what? Get up and I'll give you the Band-Aid.
Yeah. And I guess just to embellish the point a bit, I think the point has to be that you say, you failed. And guess what? I love you just as much.
There you
My
go.
love for you is not contingent on your succeeding. My love for you is absolute, sacred, and it exists no matter what you do.
Yes, very nicely said.
Yeah, it's that idea of separating the action, the failure from who that child is at their core. So I love that. These are great words of wisdom. Tell us a little bit before we run out of time, Tom. You mentioned, so most of what is Honor Bound Academy is really focused towards males, but you mentioned there's also something for females. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's the very first job I took, adolescent recovery facility, 18 to 17-year-olds, was co-ed. And I saw how that was detrimental to anything. You cannot put young teenagers together in a house or a center or what. So I see it as two different things. Now, for the past 40 years, I have worked with psychologists, psychiatrists, CEOs, financiers, all of the necessary positions to create a program. And to see it from the male perspective, I see it and will run it. But to do it for the female, there is another completely different avenue where I've collected a Rolodex of all the women that have been in my life that have taught me to see from the feminine perspective. Now, there's not going to be males in that domain because I have found and will, circle all the young ladies with women. They need to be specific for that. And the program that is a rite of passage has to be altered because boys and girls are different. But the fact of the matter is failure, love, and internal nexus of believing in yourself are two different paths for the genders, but they go to the same place and they activate in the same way, and they will bring out in you the same thing, and that is self-confidence.
That's great. I know that self-confidence is certainly something that is difficult for young women, growing up in this generation. We've got 3 boys and a daughter. So we've got both struggles that we're really working through with as far as it comes to adolescence. And it's difficult. The challenges are very unique, but in some ways they're very much the same. So I love the idea of surrounding these young women with other mentors really to help kind of guide them on the path. I think that's a fantastic way to do it.
Can you tell us a little bit about just like the overview of the program? How long is it? How old do you need to be in the program? How old would you be if you're too old to be in the program? Is this weeks or months? Is it on site? Just how's it work?
The program I based it off of my military career and special operations BUDS training. So it's a 1-year program. There's 3 phases. Each phase is 4 months long. It addresses the curriculum is psychological, it's mental, it's emotional, and it's natural or nature. And that is what I have found as a clinical therapist, as good as I think I am, the greatest therapist I've ever met is Mother Nature. You can be put into that, but you have to be taught how to understand that. There's water, there's air, there's earth. All of these things, again, thehonorboundacademy.org is the website that I placed the entire program 1 year broken down into all the slots. And to give you a unique perspective of it, it's done, the circadian rhythms of teenagers are 2 o'clock in the morning, they go to bed, and 11:30, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, they wake up. So the program is a 1 year in-house. And that is how, they're going to be up until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I expect them to get up at 11 o'clock and their day begins in that way, so that everything's firing on the greatest opportunity to give 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. 17 is the parents. I can't do that. At 21, you're on your way. I had to pick a group, and that group is 18, 19, 20, 1 year program set in 3 phases, 4 months apiece, and you're going to get an education like none other. thehonorboundacademy.org, you go there and you can see it all. You don't have to listen to me.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of great information on the website. For our listeners who haven't seen it yet, give us just a quick overview of some of you mentioned being in nature, which I could not agree with more, but tell us about some of the skills that these kids will learn while they're part of the program.
Yeah, well, scuba diving, that's a key element. Now, if you've never swum and your fear of swimming, it starts there. If you're advanced, in the end, you're all going to get, now you're being put into a world that is not natural for us. And you're breathing, so you're seeing. And in doing so, it takes you out of this world, puts you in another world. And in that world, we are the visitors. And so you see the psychology I get to play with? And then we go out and we do it on rivers, and then we do it in the bay, and then we finish it in the ocean. In each one of those domains in water are a self awakening of just how capable you are to overcome the fears of each of those pieces.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Well, what else is it, before we run out of time, that you wish our listeners knew about the books or the work that you do or the Honor Bound Academy? Is there anything we forgot to talk about?
Yeah, and what that is right now is the front part of the book. I had to tell a story that would capture you. And it shares how we went from the 1960s to the present, and to understand what today's society, with an adult population that is angry and fearful and will not communicate, it is our youth that are being sacrificed, because from my experience, my knowledge, it is our youth do not listen to what we say. It goes in one ear, comes out the other. What they do is watch what we do. And right now they're watching a society come apart and not communicate with one another. And that is creating the anxieties, the frustrations, and the depressions in our youth, because we're supposed to be showing them that we're a civil society. So the story in the book addresses that. At the end, you get the program, and hopefully in between, you enjoyed the journey.
That is absolutely fantastic. Well, I love the work that you do. I'm so thankful for this program, and that you are out there advocating and giving all these adolescents a path if they need one. And so we really appreciate you taking the time. And for our listeners, we also want to thank you for joining us again on the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today was Tom LaGrave. And to connect with Tom, visit thehonorboundacademy.org. That's where you can find more information on the books. They're also available on Amazon. That's where you can find information on the program, and that is where you can donate as well. Tom, thank you again so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both. You were wonderful.
Thanks for listening to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more about Stan and Katie Beth, go to pinnaclelegacylaw.com. You can also find links in the show notes.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.